everybody. And first off, I want to thank Janet Lee from the Story Coast. She hosted last time. So Dr. Gina Grandy is Dean and Professor of Strategy and Leadership with the Hill Levine School of Business at the University of Regina. She is also a trained leadership and performance coach and consults in the areas of leadership, women in leadership, strategy, and change. Her research and consulting experiences span for-profit, public sector, and not-for-profit organizations in Canada, US, and the UK. Gina arrived at the University of Regina 6 years ago, sound about right? And prior to that, she taught numerous higher education institutions in New Brunswick, Newfoundland and Labrador, Ukraine, and England. She swears she can still smell the ocean. So please welcome Dr. Gina Grandy. So first off, because you came from the ocean, what is one thing you love about the prairies?
That's an easy answer. It, of course, is your open sky. So I love a good lightning storm. And one of the things that's fantastic about being here is that when there's a lightning storm, I mean, the skies are open. And so that's an easy answer. It would have to be the open skies, especially during a lightning storm.
All right, well, let's continue with number one is just what is your role as Dean and Professor of Strategy and Leadership?
To be honest, that depends on what day of the week we are and what's happening. But as Dean, my responsibility is to both our undergrad and graduate students as a part of the Hill and Levine Schools of Business at University of Regina. And students will drive and do drive all the decisions that we make. Of course, I work collaboratively with my colleagues who are our faculty and our staff members, but my job is to set and work collaboratively around the direction of where we are now and where we want to be, to make sure that we are offering the best business education possible, not only in Western Canada, but across the country. And I think leading a business school, one critical component of that is making sure that we work in concert with industry, with government, and the community that surrounds us. In order for us to stay relevant, we need to make sure those connections are there.
Has your life always been in leadership and strategy?
No. I mean, for many years now, I would say it is. It's interesting because in my undergrad, I concentrated in human resources and labor relations. So I was always drawn to people, always drawn to understanding people and helping. And in my undergrad, I remember I loved an organizational development course. So maybe the signs were there. But it's an interesting path to even get to business. And when I went to high school, I hope it's better now. I didn't have great guidance counseling advice. So I went to see my guidance counselor and I said, well, what can I be when I grow up? And so apparently I had three options. I could be a teacher, a nurse, or I could go into business. And my mother is a retired nurse and my dad a retired teacher. I get a bit weak at the sight of blood, so I kind of knew nursing was out. But what I said to my guidance counselor was, even then, I said, I don't want to go into nursing, but why nursing? Why can't I be a doctor? So why was the nursing the option? So I looked at the guidance counselor and I said, well, I guess if I only have three options, it's business. Didn't really know what it involved, what it was going to entail, and it wasn't really until I did my first work term that I kind of had this taste for, I kind of like this. And so over time, I think that interest in leadership and strategy has developed, but I mean, it's been a long time now that I've been doing those types of activities.
So I'm sure during all this time of development, you've probably had a lot of opportunities. Have you always recognized those opportunities, or is it someone else that jumped out and said, hey, did you notice this? This is meant for you. Or have you always noticed them?
No, of course I haven't always noticed them. I mean, I think what I would say is that one of the things I have always done is I typically say yes before no. And if it was something that was interesting to me, even though I wasn't always sure, okay, where will this end up? That more often than not, I've always said yes. And as a result of that, fantastic opportunities have come my way. But a great example of when you don't see an opportunity that's the right one for you is actually my current role. So if you were to ask me 5 years ago, when I was moving to Regina as a faculty member, did I envision that I would be the dean of the business school? Absolutely not, and it wasn't on my radar at all. And in fact, I would have argued probably till I was blue in the face that I would not be dean here or anywhere, really. And so it really took a number of other people, and I mean a lot of people, to say, you should think about this. And I said, no, I don't think so. I mean, I'm quite happy doing what I'm doing right now. It took a lot of people to encourage me to say, yeah, you should be thinking about this. And it was never about not getting it. So it wasn't about a fear of failure. It's just that actually I didn't see it as the opportunity for me. And look where I am now. So sometimes that tapping on the shoulder makes a big difference.
So I think of all the opportunities some of us have in front of us, and we don't take them, but sometimes we get that coach. You know, we hire the business coaches, and they prod us along. As a coach, do you have a coach that has sort of pushed you into the role, or you made it by yourself?
Yeah, I don't have a coach right now. I wish I did, actually. Sometimes given the days we have, we wish we had someone to reach out. But I have been very fortunate with people that I would call them perhaps informal mentors, but also sponsors of me. I have been tremendously fortunate to have a number of people, not only here, but in all the places where I have lived and worked, who actually believe in me and create opportunities for me.
Have you always known your why, your mission, your end game? Or do you know that? Or do you know where you're going? You're going to be dean forever?
That's a great question. As I said, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have envisioned that I would be doing this. I typically revisit where I want to be every 5 years. So I kind of look at a 5-year horizon. I'm the type of person who likes to have a plan, but has a high tolerance for fluidity within the plan. So where I end up is rarely where kind of you thought exactly you would be. So 5 years ago, 5 years before coming here, there were a number of things that were kind of on my 5-year plan, and I achieved most of them. What I would say right now, and truth be told, is, now that I'm in an administrative position, I think I would be fibbing if I didn't say that I'm thinking about what the next 10 years might be and considering, other leadership positions within universities. But I'm going to give myself a couple of years at least in this role to sort of make sure I feel comfortable. But it's every 5 years for me. In regards to the mission part, it's interesting. Often as a leader or someone in a position of formal authority, you get that question around what do you want your legacy to be? And I always struggle with that kind of thing, because I just think, truth be told, what I would like if someone were to say to me, what is it you would like for people to say when you leave the position? Of course, you hope you leave it a little better than you found it, that there's people along the way, you've made at least some positive small difference. But truth be told, what I would really like at the end of my term as dean or any role I am, that people actually still look at me and think I'm a decent human being, and that I feel like I'm a decent human being.
Yeah, good answer. So you talked a little bit about, you came here, you had some goals, you've hit those goals. Would you say you were bolder now in your asks than you were 10 years ago? And do you think it's a growth thing, age thing?
Yeah, I think it is absolutely age. I think I am bolder in my ask now. There's times when I reflect after a conversation and I wish I had still been bolder. But with age comes that sense of actually, I think, greater clarity around what it is you want, but also what it is not worth it to you. And I think with that, when you get that greater clarity, it's easier to ask for bolder asks. It's also easier to say no.
So is there anyone in particular that ever reached out to you, encouraged you, inspired you along the way?
There's so many, and I could go on and on with this, but I will talk about one particular person, and she actually is in the UK, a really good colleague of mine and dear friend. What I would say about her, and she's actually dean now, third time around dean at different schools in the UK, and she wasn't a dean when I met her, but clearly somebody who, you say they see something in you. And she created opportunities for me. She is always someone I would say saw something that perhaps I didn't see. So in some of the work, for years actually, she would say, Gina, I really think you should go the administrative route. I think you should be considering, a deanship. And I said, absolutely not. It's not where I want to be. It's not what I want to do. And when I sent her a note to say, I've applied for this job and I've been shortlisted, it was quite funny, and she's British, and so she sent me back a text to say, I've nearly weed in my pants. So she is somebody who is a confidant, someone who I trust, someone who I know has my best interest, and also someone who will have really tough conversations with me. She asks me some of the toughest questions that anyone else will ask me. She will disagree with me, but she is also my greatest advocate and sponsor.
So why is it that you had said, they had said to you, you should be dean, and you're like, there's no way. Why is it, is it common with women? We don't believe that we can do it. It's not the right time. It's whatever. Why, is that a common woman thing? What is it?
It is a common woman thing. I will tell you, in regards to my particular situation, my life is very good. So my research is very important to me. I love what I do. I do research around women in leadership. I do work around stigma and work. I loved what I was doing. And so there is that notion of also is actually, so some of it was about, for me in the time, it was actually, do I want to give up what I'm doing right now that I love for something that I'm unsure about? But it is a woman thing. And I know when people came to me initially and said, you think about it, I teach this. But I would have said, no, I'm not ready. It's not for me.
So I saw you speak at a leadership event less than a year ago, and you commented, and I wrote this down, understand how others see you and listen more closely to those who are seeing more in you. And I just said, why can't we see our own awesomeness?
Yeah, I do think some of it is a gender aspect. I'll say for me, some of it's also about how we are brought up. So, I come from a family where I was loved dearly, but at the same time, we were always reminded to keep our ego in check. So I feel very privileged. I feel that I have capabilities, but I also feel in many ways, there are lots of other people around me with the same capabilities or better. I mean, I always would say, yeah, I'm pretty average and I work hard, which is also a typical thing that a woman will say. But again, it wasn't, so I came from a family whereby you didn't go around boasting about how good you were. You just worked harder so that actually you were always getting better. But at the same time, I have learned over time to celebrate small wins or to acknowledge in some way, whether it is time for myself, whether it's a small treat of jewelry or whatever it happens to be, to actually celebrate my successes and accomplishments, and actually that they don't have to be perfect. And so over time I have learned to, I think, appreciate myself in a way that still allows me, as my dad would say, to keep my ego in check, but to actually not have shame in what we do achieve.
You had mentioned earlier when they asked you to be dean, you were happy. It wasn't that you had feelings of I can't do this. You were happy doing what you were doing. So in any part of your life, have you ever felt inadequate?
Every single day.
Oh.
I say that though in a way of not in a sense that, when I was younger, I would have called myself a perfectionist. I mean, I was never perfect, but always striving, and it was never good enough. Over time, I've learned that actually, sometimes good is good enough. But I think for me, the inadequacy is more about the notion that we can always be better. And so, it's not about actually saying it wasn't good enough. But what do I learn? What have I learned from this? What would I do a little bit differently? What do I take away from this? And there are days when you just think, yeah, okay, I got it right today. There are other days when you think back without kind of kicking yourself, but you actually think, yeah, I can do a little better than that for the people who are around me.
Have you ever felt injustice or discrimination or unfairness in any part of your life?
I have lived a very privileged life, and so I think when we think about unfairness and discrimination, we also have to think about the context for me. So I am mindful of more to making any big claims in regards to that. But in regards to unfairness, absolutely, and I suspect we all have. And what I would say, without trivializing or downplaying the experiences of others, I think sometimes life is unfair. And I think there are great lessons we can take from that the notion of expecting fairness all the time often leads to great disappointment, and we don't build resilience as a result of that. The other thing that I have learned over time is that actually if it doesn't work out in one particular path, sometimes if it's something that's really, really important, I take a step back, I reframe, and I think about, well, yeah, okay, this time, but actually I'm not ready to give up yet. Now, I say that in a way that's not taking into account real systemic issues that may be in organizations that particular people face, that's more than simply attitude. That's about challenges that actually we need to take a deeper look at. My life, I have been very fortunate to be able to, the challenges that I have faced, I have had the skills, the tools to be able to find other opportunities to overcome it.
So I want to talk a little bit about working so hard to get where you are, and I turn to everybody you, because there's a lot of stories right now on hustle. And they say, we shouldn't, women working more than, an 8-hour day, and it's not worth it, and we need to take our rest and everything. And I'm looking at all of you, we're all entrepreneurs, or, how many of you work more than an 8-hour day to get your business up? Yeah, this is, so I want to talk about hustle and working those long hours, and I don't know if would I be where I am today if I didn't put in those long hours, and how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I'm not a great one to give advice about work-life balance. I have terrible work-life balance, and it's not something I'm proud of. It's something that I am working hard to be better at. When it comes to entrepreneurs, I think there has to be, a couple of things that I would say, that if it is the 18 hours a day, is make sure you like what you do. And be clear about with yourself, why you're doing it. Because in those times when things get really, really tough, if your heart isn't in it, or you're not sure about why it is you're doing it, it makes it really hard to carry on, or I think burnout will also seep. The other thing that I would say as to entrepreneurs would be hire well. Hire well, because as entrepreneurs, you carry so much yourself. It is your business, your idea, and it's difficult to pass those decisions to other people to share in that. Hire well and work and spend a lot of time in regards to who you hire, because once you have that trust with the people you work with, I think you approach it very differently in regards to what it is you're willing to share or delegate or pass to them in their growth.
So do you think women leaders have different, actually I'd start with the first question. Would you say leaders tend to have a common personality traits, and what are a few common ones?
There are a number of aspects, that make for good leaders, but when we look at the leaders around, I think it's difficult for us to say, okay, here are the 5 things that are common with individuals. And the reason I don't like to do that is because I also believe people should be able to have the space to define what leadership is for them, and what it means in their organization, or what it means for them in their own personal growth, to say, this is who I am as a leader, and figure that out along the way.
Because I think if we all were leaders and all had the same personality traits, not so good. Yeah. So what are the 3 most important things you did to contribute to your success?
I mentioned earlier the notion that a tendency to say yes more often than no. And at times in my career when it wasn't always clear for this particular opportunity, so when we weigh and we say, okay, what do I get out of this versus what do I give? It wasn't always clear, but it was interesting to me. Somebody had thought I might have something to contribute. I almost always said yes. And for me, that has contributed, because I always learned things I didn't expect to, and new opportunities emerged in unexpected places. So it now has created a tendency for me when I need to say no more often, that it's harder for me to say no. And I'm curious as well, so I have this curiosity, again, more likely to say yes. So that would really be, I think, the first one. The second one would be that I learned early on that there are consequences to our actions and the decisions we make or don't make. And I'll recount a story, so I'll say in another lifetime. It was a long time ago. When I was very young, I coached a soccer team. And I was really frustrated with the process. I mean, I might have just come out of high school. And I was, at the end of the summer, we had to put in a report, or maybe we didn't, and I decided I was going to. And so I was really upset that they didn't provide us a couple of things. I remember with first aid kits for the young kids who were playing, and I thought, why not? I put in other things in regards to, processes that I thought were unfair, and all of these types of things. Now, interestingly, my father didn't discourage me from doing it, but nor did they tell me that, when you speak your mind and when you say things that go against the grain, there are consequences. But I felt firmly that I needed to say this. So the next summer, I decided to apply to be a soccer coach again. Well, guess what? I didn't get the job. And so very early, I learned that there are consequences to us expressing our opinion. And we need to be able to live with those consequences. And so for me, it is always thinking about, okay, if I'm going to say this, if I'm going to do that, recognizing that there are consequences to decisions or indecisions, and can I live with what the possible consequences are of that? And that for me has been pivotal in my success, because it means that, often we say something or we do something, and when it doesn't work out the way we want, we just think, how did that happen? Well, there are consequences to our actions. And thirdly, the other thing that I would say would be about learning from what could be perceived as failure. And so reframing failure, and failure is not even the right word to use, but reframing failure as learning. And I believe that we all, while we don't like it, we all need a little rejection. We all need a few jobs that we don't get, even though we had our heart set on them, because it actually makes us stronger. So I think I have fairly thick skin, but I feel failure or something that really matters to me deeply, but what I have developed over time is a really, really fast recovery time. So I will allow myself to feel the rejection or the disappointment, and I will say, okay, this is okay, but I will only give myself a little bit of time to be able to do that. And then I just think, what did I learn from this, and how do I move on? And that over time has allowed me to be able to continue to try, whether it's apply for a dean position when I really did not think I was going to get it, move across the country when I had a very comfortable job on the East Coast, live in England when I had a job on the East Coast, but go to a non-permanent position. But all of those things have allowed me to be able to build resilience, so that most things I'm able to face, even if it is something that hurts, or even if it doesn't turn out the way that I want it to.
Is there ever something inside you that you've made the right decision? Is there that little twinge? Do you know that?
Mostly. A number of years ago, what I had noticed, and this was also about, perhaps when I noticed it was being in conversations where, whether it's somebody insults you indirectly or something makes you uncomfortable, and after the fact you walk away and you think, oh, why didn't I say something? What I learned is actually that I have a physiological response. My stomach turns over, so I have this little twitch that happens. So if I happen to be in a meeting or encounter something and I get that feeling, more often than not, now what I do is actually take a moment or a second to reflect. And sometimes the feeling's off, right? Sometimes actually I'm not reading the situation in the way that I think, that what that means. But if I have that physiological response now, more often than not, that I will actually, sometimes I'll even say, I'm not quite sure what's happening here, but something about this conversation makes me uncomfortable. So that would be, for me, that would be and the same thing applies when you've done something that you think is the right decision. I don't get that twinge in my stomach.
Does anyone else feel that twinge in your stomach? It's not right. Something's, good. Do you have any words of advice for women entrepreneurs who want to make a difference and step up as a leader? Or how or where does even one start? I mean, as a role on a board, soccer coach, just stepping up.
What I would suggest is for you to give a little thought to where it is. So, maybe it's not your end game, but kind of even if it's for me, it's the 5 years, and so maybe I have issues with commitment, but it kind of the 5-year period. But to actually give yourself some time to think about where it is you want to be and why. And that may be writing it down, and I say this because, I say this because too often we don't actually know what we want. We actually don't know. So we get upset when we have a conversation or something doesn't work out the way we want. But I'm not sure we are always fully aware of our own intentions and our own motivations. So give some real thoughtful consideration, write it down to where it is you want to be and why you want to be there. Then it makes it easier to say that actually, so what matters to me is that I'm giving something back to the community. And then you can start to say, well, actually, what are the types of boards? What are the causes that are important to me? The other thing that I would say is to actually make those things clear and transparent to other people. So sometimes we actually assume that other people are supposed to know what we want. And when we don't get it, we get really upset with them. And so what I would say is, again, there are consequences to our actions, but I think that actually articulating those and talking about what it is you want and why you want it, it means that other people around you will sometimes step up, and all of a sudden someone else is sponsoring you, is your sponsor for here's this opportunity. Other times it is a function of actually if you're in a job, and so in an entrepreneur or business that actually when you raise that and you don't get that answer you want, I think you have also greater clarity around, yeah, this isn't quite right for me, or I'm going somewhere else. But you've thought it through.
Yeah, I like that, because we're all here today and we all have an opportunity to say what we want. Someone here can help you to get to the next step. I'm pretty sure of it, because I have been somewhere where you haven't, or you've been somewhere. And that's why we're here, is to hear your story, but just talk to each other. Take the time to meet someone you don't know, So my final question, and then we will go to a Q&A, is you're busy. How do you recharge? What do you do?
I think we're all busy. I have to be careful not to. I sometimes use it. Yeah, I'm very busy. Now I've switched to my life is full, so that I'm not actually saying busy, but we're all busy. We all lead very full lives. For me, the recharging actually comes from taking time just by myself. So many people would call me an extrovert. I really like people. I like to be around people. But a colleague of mine referred to me as an outgoing introvert. I am one of these people that actually I need time by myself, walking by myself, clarity, and actually I can be my best self when I'm able to block times. What I have found is that I have lower tolerance. So when I notice myself that if someone's asking me to do something or in a conversation and my internal voice is kind of a sense of annoyance, like, really? That actually that's my trigger for me to say, actually, you need to step away, because that's not my natural response. I know I need to have time on my own. And of course, where it gets challenging is that when life is full, is making sure you're able to carve out. And so I'm still learning to not make apologies for making time for me to be able to recharge. But I need time on my own. No words, no people, so that then I can embrace people again.
Let's thank Dr. Gina Grandy for today. Thank you very much for sharing. Yeah, really great.